afternoon. It's a little late for coffee in the morning, but we'll go with the afternoon coffee break, tea break, whatever it is that you're going to enjoy at this time. Hi from all of us here at Highway. We are still growing and learning in the learning curve, and that has its challenges. Probably because I prefer Crayola and we have so much more technology than that. So we'll catch up on that. But thank you for your patience with this. Word of encouragement is that I will be, I'm actually going to share a devotional today that I read in a magazine that I've recently started buying. The magazine is called Life Beautiful, and it has this really, really neat article in there. This particular devotional starts with a scripture in Matthew 22, and it's a lawyer talking to Jesus, and he's one of them, the lawyer, asked Jesus a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's kind of what I want to share with you today. Loving our neighbors. In times like this, we go into survival mode. We take time to make sure we have everything okay in our house, that we're all in order, that our family is in order, and that is fully understandable because these are unprecedented times right now. Now that we've had a week or two to sort of adjust to the shock of everything shutting down, maybe I can throw out the challenge of let's explore something in Scripture in a meaningful way on maybe a once a week basis and say, let me digest this. Let me sort this through. Is this something that can apply to me? And if it is, Lord, how do you want to work that out in my life? So this devotional speaks wonderfully to loving our neighbors. And it's the context of the lawyer was asking Jesus a question to try to trick him, which is funny because, well, we know what we know about lawyers and what we feel, but all that aside, they were still trying to trap Jesus into an answer so they could prove him to not be the Messiah. And Jesus spoke to them very clearly, and he said, our first commandment is to love God with everything that we have within us, and then to love our neighbors the same way we love ourselves. And that last sentence is what catches my attention. What does that look like? In our culture today, let alone without a virus, how do we express our love for our neighbors the way we love ourselves? And someone posted this morning a neat thing that I'd been talking about for a few years and hadn't read it in a while. But the question was, if the church building were to close down today, would your community notice the difference? And I'd like to say we should make that difference now. Irregardless of where we have been on that opinion prior to now, we have an opportunity to make that difference now for our community. The outline in this is things to help us learn to love our neighbors, is to check our motives. Are we taking care of somebody because it makes us look good? We're going to get points with the community groups. We're going to have stature. We're going to be popular. Not necessarily the motive that God is wanting in all of this. He wants us to care for everybody because they all bear his image. And that in and of itself should be enough for us to take care of those who are neighbors around us. We are merely to act as he expects his servants to act, so he can provide love to a needy world. We're his hand of love extended. And if we know how to take care of ourselves, well, we've already got a good start on ideas of how to take care of our neighbors. Another option in here is to look for signs. What are a sign that you can help look after your neighbor? Our neighbors aren't always what we think they may be. We have to watch and see. And now in this time of when we've all slowed down and we're taking time to process maybe even just some of our own things in our life. Are we simplifying things? What do we need? What don't we need? Let's take that kind of scrutiny and apply it to those around us and say, what does my neighbor need? How can I be a part of answering that need? What are they asking for when they say hi, or they kind of walk away quickly because they don't want you to get germs on them or anything like that? We understand that, but is there a way we can look at how we have functioned around our neighbors and how they respond to us, for us to learn what it is we can be, or how we can be Jesus' hand extended to them by how they express themselves? The third strategy in all this is to show God's grace. You never really know what's going on in our neighbors' lives. Our neighbor next door, our family member we chat with occasionally, the acquaintance down the street, the person we meet at the supermarket. These are all examples of our neighbors, and we have no idea if that very wealthy looking person is dealing with such a deep personal tragedy that they're just covering it up for now. And this is where we can ask God to show us how we can help this person. Even if they're not ready to express that themselves, part of it is us learning to come into relationship with people. And as we come into that relationship, as we say hi at the corner or at the bus stop or on our job or to the neighbor next door who may or may not be friendly, when we come into relationship and do things that God asks us to do for them or on their behalf, we develop a relationship. And when we develop that, we will find opportunities to share Jesus in some shape or form. And we can show them grace the same way God has shown us grace. When we know God's purpose for our lives is another strategy, another step in the process. We are called to be good neighbors and good stewards of our time and our talent and our resources, is a quote in this article. But there's a huge need in the world for love and the good acts that express it. There are too many people who say, church people, my neighbor, they couldn't care less. Let's find a way to make that change. Let's find a way for our neighbors to say, that person reached out, that person tried, that person said hi. Anything like that is a wonderful thing we can do to extend God's grace, and that we know our purpose then is that while we can't change the whole world, we can change the part of it that we are in. This is the address we're asked to operate in, so it's good for us to make those connections and make those tries for people to know. And finally, take courage. The Samaritan, which is another chapter in the book of Luke, the parable of the Good Samaritan. And it also reiterates to love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. There's also a version of that in Mark chapter 12, verse 31. And recently, in a group we were with, we had a conversation about if God has it in his word more than once, it certainly demands a lot of our attention. So when God specifically speaks to loving him with all our heart, soul, and mind, to love our neighbors as ourselves, there are going to be moments where that requires a lot of courage. And I will be praying that this week you will have an opportunity to use courage, rise up to a challenge that God has placed in you, to perhaps speak to a neighbor near you, a friend who you haven't chatted with for a while. But in doing so, wear the compassion that God gives us, because that neighbor, that friend, that family member, that business associate, that co-worker, they're God's children too, and they are worth his love. And if he died for us, he also died for those who don't know him. And we are required to love our neighbors like ourselves. If we're that dedicated to making sure we are right with God, let's find opportunity to help others become right with God. And let us be the tool, the venue, the person, the hands extended in which they can see Jesus in us. And so that's my encouragement. That's my thoughts for today. Take time to read the story of the Good Samaritan. Soak it up a bit, digest it, read it over a few times, and see what it is God would have you to do because of what he is showing you in those verses in Luke chapter 10. And I pray you have a great week. We'll see you again soon, and thank you. Bye now.